Hello and welcome to Future Squared. Stephen Hawking once said that intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, so let's adapt. My name is Steve Glaveski, and each week I'll bring you conversations with preeminent thought leaders from a variety of fields to help you think in a multidisciplinary way, kick goals in your professional and personal life, and better navigate what is fast becoming a brave, new world. And without further ado,
come with me if you want to live.
Hi everyone, as you've probably noticed, Future Squared has been publishing a few episodes related to all things Web3, crypto, the Metaverse, and NFTs lately. These are episodes that come from a podcast we have launched called the Metaverse podcast. Now, going forward, you'll see a few less of these episodes appearing here on Future Squared. You might see a few that we think are pervasive and transcend Web3. But going forward, if you really enjoy these conversations on Web3, crypto, the Metaverse, you'd like to stay informed about everything going on in this space, make sure you subscribe to the Metaverse podcast, which you can find in Spotify, in Apple, on Google Podcasts, wherever good podcasts are found. And if you are wondering how your organization might go about better understanding and navigating the world of Web 3.0, we have just published a 50-page ebook called The Web 3 Value Chain, 50 use cases for organizations old and new. In it, you'll find, as the title suggests, numerous use cases that run the gamut from sales, marketing, customer relationships, HR, operations, finance, legal, you name it, you can find it in there. So it will definitely help you to better navigate the world of Web 3.0. You can find that over at our website, metaverse.io. And with that out of the way, here's my introduction to today's guest. My guest today is Ben Fairbank. He's the CEO and founder of RFOX, a Web3 platform on a mission to empower everyone to play, create, and earn in an immersive metaverse without borders. RFOX is a team of 100 builders, creating a metaverse that acts as a platform connecting white label services in one central hub. Businesses and creators can tap into tools for finance, gaming, VR, NFTs, e-commerce, and retail, and market to a ready-made audience of users. In this conversation, we unpack a lot. We kick things off with Ben's origin story. We look at Ben's definition of the metaverse and how far away virtual reality mass adoption really is. We discuss interoperability in the metaverse, hiring for Web3 projects, and the shifting capital raising landscape. We explore the merits of taking the time to get things right versus rushing out the door with a half-baked product. We look at tokenomics and new incentive mechanisms. In particular, we look at how contributors and users of Web3 protocols and projects are effectively becoming the new sales and marketing team. We look at how token economies are actually capable of redefining the media landscape. We explore what Ben thinks about some of the critiques of spending a lot of time in the metaverse insofar as social consequences are concerned. And finally, we unpack Ben's views on pure decentralization versus centralization. With that introduction out of the way, please enjoy my conversation with the one and only Ben Fairbank.
Where are you from?
Well, from Melbourne, based in Melbourne at the moment, but done a bit of work over in Southeast Asia, been to Vietnam a number of times. You're in, I call it Saigon. I know the technical term is Ho Chi Minh City. You're over there at the moment?
Yeah, we sort of, we flip between here and some of the sort of more remote areas of Vietnam as well, because Vietnam's a tech capital, you know, and there's people all around the place, but I'm originally from Adelaide.
Yeah, from Adelaide, mate. Let's just keep rolling. We're already into the conversation, so let's keep going. Okay. Originally from Adelaide, and I see you went over to Southeast Asia back in 2008. You spent some time in the Philippines, Myanmar, Vietnam. You even spent some time up in Kuwait. I'd love to first learn what prompted you to make that move from Adelaide over to Southeast Asia. And in addition to that, I mean, 14 years later, you're still there. So what's forced you to stick around?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think that traveling overseas for work now is kind of like what catching a bus used to be. It's kind of back in the day, if you were working overseas, people thought, what are you doing and how did you get that opportunity? And now it's sort of much more commonplace. But I think Adelaide is one of those places that you outgrow very quickly. If you want to build a career and you want to do something substantial, you have to either do fly in, fly out roles, which I was doing previously. So what I did was actually, to be honest, I had a hit list of 3 people I wanted to work for. I wanted to work for Branson, Dennis O'Brien, the richest guy in Ireland, and Jack Welch from GE. But Jack Welch, he was done by the time I was ready. But I got to work for Virgin, for Branson, and got to work for Dennis O'Brien. So
is your background Irish at all? Or
no.
What was the desire to work for him?
I just saw that those guys had been instrumental in building stuff from nothing. And I wanted to have a look at I wanted to work for the different management styles because, as you know, Dennis O'Brien, many people wouldn't know, has sort of built businesses through force and determination and through opportunistic just going in and having a look at the markets. Like, for example, when he pitched the license for Myanmar, which is why I ended up there, he pitched and lost, and it was a $250 million bid and lost, and then thought, how am I going to recoup the money? And then when bought the tower companies that the winning bidders for the telco licenses would have had to use to build the towers, and said, I'll recoup the cost from that. And then that's got cement. So what I should be doing is building construction. I should buy the construction companies with the cement. So I really learned how to capitalize on business opportunities through him. And Branson was much more sort of the brand builder and the making sure that you look after the end customer and have that really aspirational sort of message behind the branding. So going back to your question, I'd go wherever I had to go to try and get exposure to these people. And as you said, I ended up in Kuwait and ended up helping to work with a sheikh in one of the big telcos. So we did a lot of advising work for him and putting together customer experience plans and stuff like that. So I went wherever I was recommended to go, and ended up going from being someone looking for opportunities outside of Adelaide to being, hey, there's a company over in X country. It's probably only got 6 months left to operate. Can you go in there, find out what's wrong, see if you can turn it around and get the customers to come back in and work out what's gonna work long term. So my job, I ended up becoming a turnaround person more by fault than design. But I loved it. And I think that the reason that I stayed over there, to the last part of your question, is because I can't go back when I realize how well you can live in this part of the world. The cost of living in Australia is just like astronomical. What
is the cost of living arbitrage, where you can earn, say, Australian dollars and spend it in Vietnam? Like, you can live like a king effectively on a relatively meager salary.
Yeah, I think that like real estate costs are actually on par with some of Sydney's costs. If you want to live in a bubble, if you want to live in a really developed, high foreign residency area, you could pay like, $2 or $3 million for a good apartment. So it can be expensive in certain areas. But the thing is that the cost of living for food and lifestyle is probably about a third to a half the cost. So I just think, and the weather's fantastic and the people are fantastic. And I just honestly believe that it's kind of like a little bit of a reset, because the way they embrace technology in this part of the world is amazing. But I feel as though they'd sort of been behind in many aspects, and they're, instead of going through the paces, what you can do is, if you go in and run these fast moving tech companies, you can actually help them to skip some of those steps. So instead of taking 10 years to catch up, you can take 2 or 3 years and they're at the exact same point. And there's fantastic opportunity because of the population. The world's very deep here.
600 odd million people in Southeast Asia. So it's a huge amount of people. And I mean, just to your point on the food being about a third of what it is here, not only is it cheaper, but it's bloody awesome. I mean, I've been to Saigon 3 times. I've been up to Hanoi once. And like, my favorite is the bun, or as we say here in the West, the vermicelli salad. And nothing fresher and tastier than that. Off the street for $1, it's absolutely beautiful.
Mate, I think that one of the things that you hear from people like Branson and some of these leaders is that they talk about changing their toothpaste or changing their coffee or changing their food so that you're continually like shocking yourself and waking up and having a look at what's around you. And the thing is that when no matter how tough your day is or how hard what you're doing is, you get in a car and you drive somewhere and you're constantly reminded that you're somewhere else and that you've got an amazing opportunity, and you put yourself in that situation. And I think that it's a big wake-up call to continually remind yourself as well how lucky you are compared to the people that are around you. So leaving a positive social footprint is extremely important for us. We give a lot that we don't really promote or talk about. We give a lot to charity and behind the scenes to help people, and that's important. If we're here and we're benefiting from being here, it's important that we give back and look after people as well. But I think it's much more about just shocking your brain into thinking about things in a different way and reminding yourself that you're living your life. You're actually doing something.
Absolutely. And I think when we are in new and novel environments, we tend to get into that flow state because everything is different, and we tend to be more observant and we're more immersed in what's around us. And, I've got a business registered in Australia and in Singapore, and I've spent a lot of time in, Singapore, the Philippines, Malaysia and Thailand. And whenever I'm over there, it is just that higher level of consciousness, and you just feel more driven. Whereas when I'm back home, even though I'm still driven and getting stuff done, it can be easy to just fall back into that sort of just comfortable. Don't even feel like you're alive sometimes. Like you need to go surfing or something to remind yourself that you're alive. Whereas when you're over there, just walking around, and I feel that sort of level of consciousness just
100%. You're a bit of Stephen Kotler fan, are you?
Well, yeah, I'm a massive Stephen Kotler fan. Jamie Wheel, all those guys from the Flow Genome Project. The Rise of Superman, fantastic book. Our audience should definitely check that out. But it's so true. And I was sad to learn, speaking of Stephen Kotler and other Flow practitioners, of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's death late last year. So may he rest in peace. But on being immersed, I mean, you're head of RFOX Labs, a tech company you founded about 4 years ago. You've got a team of about 100 people now. Is that correct?
Yep. 100 people plus all the contractors. Yep.
Yep. Excellent. And your business effectively operates across 5 streams. You've got RFOX Vault. Is it RFOX Vault or RFOX Vault? What's the branding? RFOX Vault.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've kind of rebranded everything to RFOX because RFOX Labs is also like Labradors and other businesses. And what we thought was, as we start to gain sort of more global appeal, we wanted to make sure that we're not in a situation where we're getting a cease and desist from some small little company registered as RFOX Labs somewhere. So we sort of just change everything to RFOX Vault, RFOX Finance. Yep.
Fantastic. So, okay, let's stick with RFOX. So high level, big picture, 20,000 foot view, what is RFOX?
Yeah, so RFOX is effectively a platform, a super app, and the one joining piece is the metaverse, is the virtual reality space. So effectively, anything that we build, such as finance, games, NFTs, anything that we build plugs into that metaverse space and the virtual reality space. And that space is effectively our showroom, the showcase for all the products that we have. And then once we open that up and it's all clicked together and it's all live and operable, anyone who comes and plugs into that system is effectively plugging into that platform. So in simple layman's terms, we're a metaverse builder, and the metaverse acts as a super app.
Excellent. And I mean, on the term metaverse, obviously everybody's got different definitions of it. How do you define it, Ben?
I define it back from the guy that sort of coined it back from the snow crash. It has to be interoperable.
Yep.
So a lot of people will butt heads because everybody wants to cash in on the metaverse tag, and we've spent 4 years trying to explain to people we're a blockchain venture builder, building this ecosystem and super app, and it all plugs into this virtual reality space. And people are saying, what the hell are you talking about? And everyone's tried virtual reality stuff and it doesn't work. Yep. And now you're trying to do real retail and e-commerce, which people have tried to do virtual malls and stuff. It doesn't work. And we just don't get it. And Zuckerberg comes out and talks for 15 minutes and suddenly everybody gets it. So we go back to the original definition and say, has to be interoperable, has to contain VR, but effectively it's an immersive, interoperable platform that's fueled by VR that allows us to connect all of these, what is now being coined as Web 3.0 products and services together. So when we look at a gaming platform doesn't have VR, is on one chain, for example, it's a real stretch to sort of say that that's a metaverse. And It has to be interoperable, and we've chosen to be chain agnostic and to try and make sure that we can work on multi-chains, and that we're actually making sure that we're not maximalists. We want to make it that, and the example we've given since day one is, if I go down to the department store to buy an air conditioner, I want to be told about how this thing's going to cool me, right? I don't want to hear about I need to use this particular type of electricity that powers it and how the electricity's formulated and how it's charged. I don't care what the technology behind it is. I just want the air conditioning unit. So what we've tried to say is, how do we provide, and this is how RFOX came about. RFOX, Red Hat, Linux was a great platform, but no one could use it, and it needed a Red Hat to build products on top. And we turned around and said, RFOX. Fox is synonymous with being a cunning decision maker. They're synonymous with finance in the Asian region. And we thought, RFOX, let's build products on top of blockchain that make it so that people don't actually have to understand blockchain to use the products that are powered by that technology.
Excellent. So when you say interoperability and you're chain agnostic, I mean, at the moment with RFOX Vault, your metaverse, does that support some of the main layer ones like Solana and Ethereum? What's the go at the moment?
Yeah, so we have a thing called RFOX ID, which is effectively like a Auth0 login, and you can use Facebook or email or mobile phone. And what it will do is it will spin up a wallet for you on all the chains that we're connected to. So we've got WAX, we've got ETH, BSCs coming now, and then we will introduce stuff like AVAX, Solana, IMX, Immutable X. So what will happen is, effectively, you can just get your ID through, let's just say Facebook, for example. You get your ID through Facebook, start playing a game, earn on play to earn, tokens come into your wallet, straight into a fiat off-ramp and cash out, and you realistically have to have it's not a steep learning curve to be able to get in and get involved. So that means that you don't have to also worry about, like, if you look at our NFT white label platform, all of the NFTs, it doesn't matter what chain you're on, are all displayed in one place. Because the biggest problem people have is, where's that NFT I bought? Oh, that's on BSC. I have to log into a new wallet and I can't find the damn thing. So one of the biggest obstacles that we've got is, we've kind of said, let's move towards the Amazon's one click. We're miles away from that, and everybody is, but we're building as feverishly as we can to try and make it so that anybody can pick it up and use it. And we use people like our mothers-in-law and father-in-law here in Vietnam, and we think, no English, not technology savvy, if they can start staking and farming on our products and services and using our products and services, then we're headed in the right direction. And it only takes about 20 minutes to half an hour to sort of educate those people, but that's 20 minutes to half an hour of next to them with a translator. So we're still miles away, but we're not unrealistic. We understand that this is it's not going to be an overnight thing. We understand that.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a good point. I mean, you look at Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. Right now, it's very much innovators and early adopters who are into this space, who have the MetaMask set up and all that sort of stuff, who understand staking and everything else that goes into it. But to get the early mainstream and everyone else on board, like, that education piece is significant. And the easier you can make that for people, that's going to give any Web3 protocol or project a massive competitive advantage over others that don't support that onboarding piece. I mean, just a few weeks ago, me and a colleague of mine were looking at staking a particular token on AVAX, and I hadn't actually set up AVAX in my MetaMask, and then going through that whole process, like, we figured it out relatively quickly, but even us took about 20 to 30 minutes to make sure that it was all hunky-dory before we went forward with the transacting. But someone who hasn't got that background, I can imagine for them, it's just, what is this? Like, what's MetaMask? What's a layer one? What's this? What's that? And so, I mean, when it comes to education, what percentage of, say, your resources are you investing in helping to bridge some of those gaps that the market might have in terms of their awareness and education?
It's a great question. And I talk to the people that are coming in, because I think the biggest challenge for a company in this space is that Web 2.0 people are where you're going to get your experience from, right, in your industry sectors. So because people don't have huge industry experience in Web 3.0 in their chosen sectors yet. So when people come into our company, I always say 50% of what you know is going to be hugely valuable to us, and 50% you can just pretty much throw out the window. You've got to start again. and they don't understand that or what I'm talking about. But the thing is that we say you've got stages. At the moment, we're marketing to those sneezers, as Seth Godin would say, and we have to understand that the people that invest in tokens are the ones that are basically helping to contribute to our business's success, right? But very soon we're going to switch to products. And once we've got products out there, the users that are going to use those products are quite often a different base or different audience of people, right? So you're sort of helping reward and look after your early backers, but you also have to be mindful that a lot of those people are not interested in actually participating in the product usage. So it's a different audience. However, the more that you can sort of get to cross over, the better your products and services are. And thankfully, we're building in fast-growing sectors, so a lot of our audience are interested in using our products and services. But, you know, it's the age-old adage of you're talking about the education and how much time and effort we spend a lot. But, for example, everybody in the crypto community cries, we want utility. We need to be able to spend your token in as many places as we like. And then you say, right, we've made that available. And they say, well, I'm not spending my token there. And you say, why? And they say, because my token's going to go up in value. Let somebody else come in and buy the token and they spend it, but I'm holding it because I think it's going to go up. So a lot of what people actually ask for while you're educating them is not what they actually want. It's what they're telling you is needed. So we have to balance the fact that we've got early investors, and we need to make sure that we look after those people very well, and that there's a long-standing, and that they are rewarded for recognizing these opportunities early. And then when the people come in to use the products and services, we can't use the same models as Web 2.0 have used. So the big model was land grab, buy your audience, subsidize, raise more cash. Doesn't matter if you're losing money, just get that audience in, right? Now, this whole Web 3.0 movement, you've got non-accredited investors involved for the first time ever. So you've got people coming in, the landscape's changed. You don't need to go out and get that VC funding anymore. You can if you're clever enough, you can get by without that, right? So you let the VCs in and you let the wolves in, so to speak. I'm just being honest. They make equities an expensive bedfellow, isn't it? And I think that you've got to make sure that you control your destiny. And I think that go back to what we do. How many people, when we sort of talk to people we know in SoftBank and all the rest of it in the beginning, how many people do you think would fund a group of guys that said, we're going to build Web 3.0, go back 4 years ago, metaverses, super dApp, plug in NFTs and gaming and DeFi.
Finance.
They say, good luck. Come back when this takes off, if it ever does, and we'll write you a blank check and help put rockets on your back. But until that point, good luck. So the thing is that people wouldn't have been able to get these businesses off the ground if they were relying on traditional models.
No, and absolutely. And every day I'm reading about Web3 protocols that are raising, if not hundreds of millions, at least tens of millions of dollars off products that are quite immature and teams that in some cases are completely anonymous. It's a brave new world. And to your point about rewarding early investors for taking a punt on you guys, I mean, the whole notion of tokenomics is fascinating because it does mean that you can introduce things like bonding curves where the value of a token over time will it's inherently going to go up as more tokens go into supply. Is that something you've extended to your early investors as part of your tokenomics?
It's a very good question. It's a very tricky question as well, because technically, as you know, from the securities perspective, there can be no expectation of guaranteed increase or in value or return. It's got to be purely an access perspective to the platform, to your products and services. So we have to balance the fact that people have to do work or contribute to be able to earn rewards. But ultimately, we went down the path of making sure that there was a lot of tokens in supply, meaning that there wasn't just 5% out there and it could be manipulated and pumped, which is actually which has an adverse effect, because VCs do not like it when you have 70-odd% of your tokens in supply, but the token holders like it because they know that you're not likely to be dumped on and all the rest of it. So we tried to rapidly get to the point where the most of the supply was out in the market. So we're trying to look after the end users. But now through NFTs and through the metaverse and all the rest of it, we have the opportunity through NFT assets as well to be able to continually keep rewarding. And we're working on an economic model now that will effectively mean that the shop owners that have purchased into our auctions will be rewarded in a way that, if we get our way, it'll be cost neutral, or it'll be something that hasn't cost them anything at all. We've got some really, really good models coming forwards for what we give back to these people. So it's all about, I mean, if you look at COGS was the first product that we ever brought out, our NFT, we raised $165,000 in our COGS sale and we gave $180,000 back. Then the second round we did $740,000, and I think we've given just over $1 million back. So it's extremely important that we are giving back. It's a completely different economic structure and system to the Web 2.0, where it's, as I say, subsidize, raise money to subsidize. What we say is create products and services and then give the money that you're making from the products and services back to the community. Look after them, and then they'll bring in other people as well. So it's a very different model, and it's very difficult for people from Web 2.0 space to get their heads around.
Yeah, and that whole model whereby you're giving back and you're rewarding early adopters for not only using the product, but also bringing other people into the ecosystem, whether they're users or say builders, that kind of shifts the sales and marketing budget on its head, because previously you'd invest in a lot of above the line advertising, Google ads, Facebook ads, whereas now you're giving those tokens or that fiat back to people, and those people become your extended sales and marketing team, as 100%. Opposed to
So it's a slower burn, because you've got two options really when you're a brand new project. You can either spend whatever you've got on influencer marketing and hype, and then just hope that now here's the problem. People are greedy, right? Humans by nature are very greedy. So if that takes off, you've got 50-50 there. 50% of the people run away, and that's why being anonymous is really easy, because you can just say, screw this, we've reached our financial targets and we're out of here. If you're holding a lot of money, and it's investor money, you should be accountable, right? As far as I'm concerned. So the second part is, okay, now we've got the money, let's hope that we can actually build what it is we're trying to build, right? And most people oversell. And again, that's a 50-50. Half the people actually genuinely believe they can deliver based on what they've heard and they've interacted and been told, and then find out it's not possible. And the other half know that it's not possible and don't care. Then you've got the other half of the teams, which is like ours, which says, don't do any hype, don't try and do huge amounts of marketing until you've actually got a product. We say, don't open your restaurant until you've got a kitchen and food to serve and all the rest of it. Then you've got the added, that weighs much harder, because you have to make whatever little money you had in the beginning survive, and you've got to build those products, and then you've got to hope that you've got enough marketing money to be able to promote those products and services, right? So it's the much harder route, but I think that anyone who's looking at building sustainably and long-term would morally choose that route. So that's what we've decided to do. So people say to us all the time, when marketing, and, push the coin to huge values. We've tried to balance as best we can, but the thing is, it's very, very difficult to hype something that's not released yet.
Yeah. And I mean, on that point where I think it was, I've got the guy's name, he was a marketing icon, and he basically said great marketing makes bad products fail faster.
I think that's Philip Kotler, not related to Stephen Kotler.
Possibly. We might have to look that up after the show. But right now, I mean, we're not quite in a bear market from a crypto verse perspective, but ultimately we saw a bit of a correction, shall we call it, in January. And from what I can tell, when we get into, say, a bear market or, say, a less than bullish market, that can be a great sort of litmus test for protocols, for projects, because you're not just seeing all of this dumb money come into a space just trying to get exposure to potential, hashtag to the moon projects, but it's more so about smart building, solving problems, adding real value. And that kind of aligns with what you just said there around not overpromising and not taking on too much capital and working with a smaller budget, because then you're going to be a little bit more or a lot more careful and diligent about how you allocate those resources.
100%. And the thing is that you've got an obligation to not only people that backed you early, you've got an obligation to your team as well, right? If a person quits their job and comes from a Web 2.0 industry and they come across to work for you, you've got an obligation to make sure that they haven't done that in, just a frivolous type of decision. So for us to get to a point where we haven't taken any equity funding, we haven't taken any major VC funding. We've had a couple of people like Novogratz and the rest of it come in on the token side of things and buy tokens. But ultimately, we are very, very much of the opinion that we have a moral obligation to our staff first and foremost, who are going to be the ones that are responsible for building out and dealing with our customer base. If we can't look after our staff and put our people first, then forget everything else. But ultimately, you've got a responsibility to make sure that you're building sustainably, that you're looking for that. Because again, a lot of these models like your Ubers and your Grabs and all the rest of it rely on just funding coming in. They don't have any pathway to profitability, right? So we can't operate like that. We have to operate getting revenue in from day one, and we have to look for that product market fit, establish that quickly, and then look at how to accelerate that. So I think we have an obligation to make sure that, if we've got to 100 staff now, which is probably one of the bigger crypto teams, without taking any equity funding and all the rest of it, we're obviously doing something right. It's just a matter of making sure now that we can really drive that home. And I think that those people are working tremendously hard to provide something that's going to be long-standing. And it's a race. It's a race of balance between quality and putting something out that's going to be worthwhile. And this market moves very fast. And also making sure that you don't topple everything over. The more pieces that come into our ecosystem, the more has to click together, the harder it becomes. So delays and stuff like that are a 50-50 thing. 50% because technology is not ready when it should have been. That you rely on to use, so you have to build a lot of it yourself. But you don't make any excuses for that. You just sort of say, "We're sorry, we're delayed. We're working as hard as we can." And the second part is making sure that you don't just rush something to market just to get it out. And even if your intention's good and you want to get something out, delays are inevitable with most of these projects. But ultimately, what we always find out when we get very close to releasing is, hey, there's a major vulnerability. We've had an audit, and we've found that the code that this company uses that we've used is waiting to be hacked. How come people don't know about this? And you go, we just can't risk everything by putting that out. So we build ourselves. And then people say, you were supposed to bring out 3 months ago. And we say we could have, but if we had have, and then you're just waiting for the newspapers. And then you sort of see it come up and you see protocol hacked and you think, gosh, how do people not know about this stuff? But people don't care. They just push out because they say, we had a deadline, we have to meet it. And people are applauded for meeting deadlines in this space, regardless of the opportunity cost and regardless of the cost of safety. And we'd rather just take it on the chin and be known as, have a few tomatoes thrown at us, but make sure that we get it. That
Absolutely.
It's safe.
Absolutely. And if we are going to be bringing on people who aren't just your typical early adopter crypto types, the last thing you want is someone who's kind of curious about the space. They've decided to dip their toe in the water, their wallet gets hacked, and they never come back again. And they not only do they not become ambassadors, but they start telling all their friends, colleagues, family about their experience and how they got hacked for $10,000 or whatever it is. And then everybody else suddenly is a little bit reluctant because, my mate Jim, he got into crypto and he was using this Metaverse platform and his wallet got hacked. And I think it's a more socially responsible way you guys are going about it. And pretty much every day I'm reading about something. I mean, there was the $320 million wormhole bridge attack a couple of weeks ago on Solana.
We were going to use it.
Well,
we were going to use it. We were going to use it about 4 months ago. We looked into that, and there was a couple of bridges that we were looking at, and we just looked at them and said, can't use them, can't get enough information either on the team, or the code comes back with vulnerabilities or whatever, and we just say we can't use them, so we pull out. And then sometimes again we'll get tomatoes thrown at us saying, I thought you were going to do this or that, and we say, yeah, we were. But it's very difficult because you can't talk about a lot of that openly, right? You've just got to try and say we're trying to be as safe as we can. But I think from the token investors perspective, we also have 100 people that have told their friends and family about RFOX, right?
Yeah.
So their friends and family, when they start working, they're all invested as well. So we also have 100 staff coming back saying what's happening with the price, or what's happening with the market, or what's happening with this. So we're acutely aware of, we've got a magnified internal voice that's telling us what people on the outside are thinking as well. and that's getting bigger and bigger and resonating more clearly. And so we know that we've got that pressure on our shoulders. So you have to balance that with the, we could rush something out tomorrow or the next week, but it's going to be not that great. And we'd pretty much got to the point where we were ready to release our MVP of our Metaverse, and we've actually started bringing our shop owners and that in. And we looked at it and we brought in some really good people internally and started building a big team internally. And they looked at what we built and said, this is okay. But in 6 months, a year, 2 years, guys are coming in like Fortnite with $1 billion. Facebook is spending $10 billion. The aesthetics are not going to be that important. They're going to be important, but it's about your products and services. But do you really want to go out with this when if you spend another few months, you can actually have something that's as good as, EVE Online or something as the graphics can be much, much better. And we turn around and sort of say, we're here for the next 5, 6, 7 years, just in this little discovery phase and then being around for decades. But we can either build something now and then have to stop, pull it down, disruptive, 10, 20, $30 million to change, or we can just now say, we'll show you what we've got, take you on the journey with us and show you how we're making this so much better before we're too far down the rabbit hole that we can't turn back. So we make these decisions on the fly, and we make these decisions based on data and as we go. And sometimes they might not be overly popular, but if we can put out something that's 10 times better quality, it'll stand the test of time against the big players coming in. We have to take that opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime for us.
Absolutely. And I think there's just a life lesson in there. Sometimes it pays to delay gratification just a little bit. And I mean, that's a life lesson that goes back to perhaps early human evolution, where we realize that if we plant some seeds, 6 months from now, we'll have some apples to eat, for example. And that was fundamental to us planning for the future and learning to invest and everything else that comes with that. But on teams, so you mentioned you've got one of the bigger teams in the Web3 space, 100 people at the moment. Has it been a challenge, one, hiring people who have skills in this space, but two, also convincing people who are, say, at Web2 companies, potentially venture-backed companies on a good wicket, maybe they've got some equity, to come over into a company like RFOX and make that jump? And has the issuance of tokens and that the incentive structure around that been a bit of a game changer in terms of that acquisition conversation?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We've got a good network because we've done so many turnarounds and stuff like that in the past. But for example, we've got a couple of our advisors who are very well known, starting to come into the company in full-time roles now, which is that's the testament that we've hit that sort of point now where they think, we believe that you've got a close to 100% chance of taking this to the next level and becoming very successful. So I think everybody's skeptical at first. We started getting, like, our CFO was the ex-CFO of Hoiby and Nem, so he came from high pedigree, and then we started getting people of that caliber coming in one after another. And I think that it's interesting you talk about the token side, because some of the people that come in actually find that to be too risky. They're risk adverse, and they sort of say, well, actually, give me. I'd much rather be on salary and not really have too much token bonuses or stuff like that. And we're careful about that type of stuff as well. We know that there's a limited supply, but I think that now that we're sort of getting to this point of build and getting to the products coming out, definitely people are coming across. It was very, very hard before. We had to rely on our network of people and connections, but we also had to take in a few people that were foreign to us. And it's very difficult because of the fact that you're trying to train people in something that's very new. That during COVID, during lockdown, across borders, we started working from home despite having an office and stuff like that. And we started thinking to ourselves, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to train these people when you're running flat out, and the time that you spend stopping to train these people as well is also lost productivity. But you know that it's a sharpen the axe type of situation, right? If you stop for a while, you'll get better. But I think we were told when we first started that talent acquisition would be the biggest challenge that we would face. And I think that we've been blessed because the network of people that we have weren't prepared to jump across before, but now we're starting to tap into that network. And these guys are, they've run multiple exits, and these guys know what they're doing. So we're starting to bring on an absolutely stellar all-star team now. So we're extremely excited for what's about to come. But I honestly believe that the current team's probably at 65% capacity as far as productivity is concerned, because of the fact that they're still learning, they're still getting their heads around it, and they're not yet at their full potential. That's going to get to scary levels very shortly.
Excellent. And I guess that's just also the more social proof you have, the more easy that conversation becomes, whether it's getting investors on board, whether it's getting people to join your team. It's like, hey, we've done all this stuff. We've worked with these companies. You can read about us here and there. You can check out our metaverse. It becomes so much easier. But on the concept of virtual reality and the metaverse, it seems like for about 35 years now, VR has been 5 years away, 5 years away, 5 years away, right? And now it seems like we're embracing VR, but on our screens, as in it's on our desktop and we can walk around, say, a metaverse in that respect. When you talk about virtual reality, you're talking about it from the perspective of actually having a headset on. And to that end, about 3 years ago, I spoke with Jeremy Bailenson, who heads up Stanford's VR lab. And one thing he seemed to suggest to me, and he could be right, could be wrong, was that 20 to 30 minutes he felt was the optimal amount of time you could kind of spend with a headset on before you kind of feel a bit sick and you need to jump out. So your definition of VR, and what do you think about how much time we spend in that sort of immersive space?
Yeah, I think that, so my background's customer experience and journey mapping and profiling and the data behind what makes people do the things that they do, right? So the psychology and the science behind that. And we know full well that a person on their mobile app versus a person with their headset appear as two completely different customer types because they're doing different things, right? Yeah. So it's important that we do have that desktop and the web and the app version of what we're doing. We think that based on demand, we'll see what we have in the telco space and any fast-moving tech space, that the demand will fuel cheaper headsets that people will be working in. And we know for a fact, we're speaking to companies right now, hardware manufacturers that build these headsets that are focused on trying to reduce the nausea and trying to make it so that people can spend longer in there. I think it's going to become much more, it's going to become cheaper, more accessible, and much more user-friendly from that perspective. But until then, we know that we'll heavily rely on applications, especially mobiles, in this region of the world. So we believe that bringing out like the VR side of things first is very important. And the reason that it is because you want people to, you know what this space is like, it's punishing, it's unforgiving. If you said we're building this VR-based metaverse and someone approaches it from their mobile first on a low-spec mobile in a bad internet area, they're going to say, what a crappy metaverse, I thought this was supposed to be. They put on their headsets, it's going to be, wow, when's this coming to app and all the rest of it. So the first experience has to be the whole, you've got to try this. This is amazing. And that's what we're shooting for. And we understand that that'll have a lower audience number, but that's good. What we want is to be able to test this, roll this out, make sure that the features and the benefits are, we're collecting that feedback and we can act on it. And we've got that targeted focus. That's our background. So this is not something that we're dumb. We didn't think about it, and less people are going to be able to get in. It's a calculated decision and move to do this.
Yeah, excellent. And your projections on cheaper headsets becoming pervasive?
I think because we always try and think about what's coming 3 steps ahead, because you can't compete at the local level with businesses that have got a $2 billion budget right now. We have to work twice as hard to be half as successful. So we try and think about, okay, let's build for what's coming next. So we will work on a model. This is a bit of a spoiler for you. We'll work on a model that actually allows our stakers, users, all the rest of it to obtain cheap subsidized headsets to allow people in quicker and easier. So we'll act as the bridge or the conduit until such time as the headsets drop in value. So, you know, it could be a dedicated staking or rewards pool, or do these tasks or refer these people and you'll get a headset and subsidize those. And we can actually make branded RFOX headsets that you can whitelist the applications that are available inside of there, and you can really control the experience. You can even buy the Play Store for $20,000 to $50,000, like as far as an add-on into those headsets, and we can choose what goes in there. so we can cut out a lot of the advertising in the garbage and really sort of provide a focused user experience for our end users. So I think we'll go down the route of subsidizing through staking, rewards, referrals until such time as they become. I believe personally, I think you'll see them they'll be under $100 within the next 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And that's a fantastic model. It kind of a little bit resonant to me of, say, early Dropbox growth hacks where they would have a refer a friend program, but for referring a friend, both of you got a ton of megabytes back then, because 500 megabytes was a lot. But in this case, you refer a friend, you do XYZ tasks, and you get that headset so you can use the platform in that immersive reality space, which is, I think it's an excellent model. And
but on that, it doesn't make any sense to subsidize an Oculus or a Facebook competitor headset. What makes more sense is to subsidize a branded headset, because that way we can tailor the experience that the customer actually has, and we don't have to give our data to Meta.
Yeah, and also when their friends come over, they're like, "What's this RFOX on the headset?" And they go and they need to buy a headset. They'll go to RFOX as opposed to Oculus or someone else.
Correct.
So a couple of years ago, a documentary made the rounds on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, which, if we go back to the early days of social media, it was all about connecting people, and it has very much done that. At the same time, there's been some, say, downstream consequences, whether it's political polarization, smartphone addiction, depression amongst teenagers and things of that persuasion. If we are spending, say, 10 hours a day, hypothetically, inside these virtual reality worlds, do you have any potential concerns around some of the downstream consequences of that, in terms of how humans will effectively reconcile that world with their own biophysiology and psychology?
I think, look at the Charles Duhigg habit loops and stuff like that. I think that after 3 months, we sort of start to form ingrained habit loops, right?
Yep.
And the thing is that we've all been on lockdown for a long time, most of us. People have gotten used to that. And I think if it was isolated groups of people moving in a different direction to everybody else, that becomes a much more polarized and a much more magnified type of a problem. But I think if everybody's in the same movement together, I think that there's more people working on trying to stabilize that experience and to try and make that a more even type of experience. And I'll go back to the days when I used to sit at the table with my grandfather, and he used to talk about being in the war and all the rest of it. And I used to say, gosh, we're so lucky these days compared to how you had it. And he said, you've got your own set of problems. You've got a new way of doing things. Everything moves faster. Everything's more competitive. There's more stress on your shoulders. So I think it's all relative. And I think that people coming through this new movement won't know any different. My kid will never grow up knowing anything other than cryptocurrencies, digital currencies. He'll know blockchain. He won't know a world without it. And the thing is that I firmly believe that all of those problems are related to the technology and what's happening. And there's been that type of an issue happening forever. So ultimately, I think that we'll, as a race and as a group of people, we'll work it out together. But yes, there'll be inherent problems for sure.
Yeah. And I think I share your optimism. I think whenever you introduce new innovations into society, there will be a bit of a learning curve and some things that go wrong, but over time we'll learn our lessons and we'll adapt. And you go back to the printing press, there was people, I think Socrates was against the printing press because he thought, well, once you have books, then people no longer use memory. The memory goes out the window. I guess we've kind of seen that with Google. I remember less things. I know I can Google these things, but the important things I do remember. So with we mentioned political polarization, and part of RFOX is RFOX Media, where people get paid in tokens, I imagine, to create content. And I think this creates potential positive incentives that shift us away from current media incentives, which I think are broken because a lot of it's ad driven. And when it's ad driven, we tend to appeal to the lowest, common denominator in terms of our emotions, which is fear, anger, and all this stuff that polarizes people. Whereas if you had, say, a platform, this is something I've been thinking about, that incentivizes, say, journalists to contribute objective, fair journalism that isn't biased in any way, that could potentially create lots of new business models, not just media, but so many other things. So how do you think about RFOX media and paying people to create content? And what's the sort of 3 to 5 year view? Because you're always thinking 3 steps ahead, Ben. Like, what's the long-term view for that?
Yeah, I think ultimately the content distribution models, and we're speaking to a lot of the bigger content distribution companies, it's broken, right? There's I think that there's a couple of problems, and one of them is identifying the people, payment methods, registration processes. It's a 6, 7, 8 day turnaround for a lot of stuff. If you go in and register to use a platform, can put up your content, for example, and then CNN can come along and say, hey, I want to use that as a news clip. I can buy it. I get an NFT as the change of ownership, IP issuance receipt. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that person hasn't plagiarized what they're selling you, but we now know who the person is. You've had to identify who you are to participate. So I think that the IP transfer and ownership and content distribution will be the first 2 real big winners from the space. And then having that immutable receipt to show when I bought it and that I own that piece of footage or data is very, very important. But as far as that content creation is concerned, yes, I think that incentivizing people to create content, especially focused on particular things, is going to be a big winner. It also has a set of problems as well, because we like sensationalism, and we like gossip, and we like bad news, and we like all of that type of stuff, and that's going to be magnified in an environment as well. So it's a matter of people want decentralization, right? They want no intervention, but on the same token, they also don't want their kids going onto sites and seeing untoward behavior and certain things. So it's like we don't want any policing, but yet we need policing in certain circumstances. So I think that what we still haven't solved this problem yet, that there'd be the RFOX media platform that we can actually have rules around as far as basic governance. But then you also almost need some sort of like here's a platform that's white labeled, that's like a decentralized version, and it's like go for it. So we're still trying to work out how to do those 2 pieces, because the rules and laws in every country, this is another thing. Normally, if you're in Australia, you'd set up for Australia taxation, Australian rules, Australian governance, Australian laws. We're now putting stuff out to the world. It's so much different than it was before, because you've got to be responsible for the end user and their laws and privacy acts and all the rest of it. So it's a tricky landscape, and I don't think anyone's worked out exactly how to master it. Hence, people like CZ moving countries 3 times and all the rest of it, because it's not easy, especially if you're out there, you're a doxed person. You've got to be very careful on what you put out there. So I think it's going to be great, taking control back and letting people be accountable for what they put out there. I think that's been long overdue. But on the same token, policing some of the untoward stuff is going to be difficult. Yeah.
And it kind of sounds like you're echoing Jack Dorsey's sentiments there when he was still at Twitter. He kind of proposed having a Wild West version of Twitter alongside the one with all the censorship and the cancelling, where anything goes. Which I would have definitely been using that platform or that version of Twitter instead of the current one. But it sounds like when it comes to decentralization, so there's lots of decentralization maximalists out there. But from my perspective, like when you have pure decentralization, it might come at the cost of speed, innovation. It might come at the cost of simplicity, security, and so on, which kind of echoes what you've just said there. So would it be true to say that you think you need a balance between centralization and decentralization, or is this part of us working out what pure decentralization looks like long term?
I firmly believe, and I could be completely wrong, and this is just my view. My view is that someone needs to get the ball rolling, right? So if you send, the example I always give is if you send 20 people into a pizza shop and say, buy a pizza, they're going to kill each other, right? They're going to kill each other over, I want that flavor, want this flavor, want that. And no one can make up their minds. They can't agree. And it's just natural instinct that we say, my opinion's worth more than your opinion. I've got more experience than you've got. And this is why a lot of these voting systems in these DAOs and stuff don't work, because the person with the most tokens just decides what happens, right? So, so the thing is that if you actually took that same example and said, let's create a pizza shop and put 4 different flavors of pizza out and then send the 20 people in to choose, they still have a choice. They still are able to be involved in that process. but someone started that ball rolling for them. And I think that's what's important. I think start the ball rolling, which is what we try and do, create the platform, then create the hooks that allow people to come and connect to that, like a Roblox model, and add value and build in that platform. But if someone doesn't start that platform, and we've seen it with a lot of these DAOs, you say, this is what the DAO's for, let's go. And everybody rips each other apart. Everybody that's got the early tokens just wants to work out how to maximize the value of their early investment, and no one cares about the long-term value. So someone sets up that structure, puts a bit of governance in place, and then says, right, now go, and then allows that innovation to flourish and get rewarded. That's what I believe decentralization will look like. We'll start a platform, we'll get it going, and then it's up to you where it goes.
Yeah, I think that model seems to be working well. I've got Jonathan Perkins from Super Rare on the podcast later this week, and they spent the last 4 years building out their NFT marketplace, and only recently did they launch the Rare token, and now they're starting that process of decentralization. But you needed someone to get that ball rolling, whereas if you have 100 decentralized voices from day one, it might be a case of too many chefs in the kitchen and not, spoiling the broth effectively.
100%. I think that's definitely the case. And I think that it has to be you have to have a long-term play. And if you haven't got, like we say, start with the end in mind. So we sat down as founders and said, where do we see the end point being for us as far as what we want to achieve out of this? What does that look like on a build perspective, monetary perspective? Where are we standing? Who are we with? And we really spent a lot of time focused on that, because if you don't have that North Star, it's extremely difficult, and you get sidetracked and you get distracted. So I think the thing that kept us going, I think there was 12 effectively venture builders that started up at the same time as us, trying to do something not dissimilar, but a different type of super DApp. And of the 12 that started at the same time, we're the only ones still standing. And I think it's because of the fact that we didn't lose sight of where we were trying to go and what we had on our radar. And some of them raised a lot of money and just vanished, just gone. But or they're still, the odd tweet comes out to keep the charade going. But we had a very clear vision on where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do and achieve, and that was what the result was.
Fantastic, Ben. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. If people want to learn more about RFOX, they can do so at rfox.com. And if they want to connect with yourself, Ben, where's the best place to do that?
Well, basically I do 3 Discord calls a week, which are 8 p.m. Vietnam time. We believe especially in markets that are a bit slower down, that you should be front and center, transparent, accountable. So we're there providing updates on the project, answering questions, doing giveaways, that type of stuff. On Twitter, very active on Twitter. But Twitter and Discord are the main two channels. My Twitter handle I can give you as well, but I tweet on personal views and also on behalf of RFOX as well. So a bit of a mixture, but you'll find that we're very engaged with the community and very approachable, and you can always find us.
Excellent. Well, I'll dig up those links and add them to the show notes for our listeners. Ben Fairbank, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a treat.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Hi guys, Steve again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to receive a weekly email from me, complete with reflections, books I've been reading, words of wisdom, and access to blogs, ebooks, and more that I'm publishing on a regular basis, just leave your details at futuresquared.xyz/subscribe and you'll receive the very next one. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, take a minute to like, share, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It goes a long way to giving the podcast the exposure it needs so I can continue bringing you guests and conversations of the highest caliber. You can catch me on Twitter at Steve Gwibeski and on Instagram at @TheSteveGwibeski. Until next time.
Hasta la vista, baby.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.